Just what should we expect from Jonathan Taylor in the 2023 NFL season? That's what we're going to talk about in today's video. A quick PSA before we get into it. If you could like this video, subscribe to the channel. That would be fantastic. I think we're at 215 subscribers. Trying to get to 250 by the time training camp starts. So, about 3-4 weeks from now. Today is June 29th. So if you could help us out, that would be fantastic. And leave a comment below. Today we're talking about Jonathan Taylor. Tell me where you would feel comfortable drafting Jonathan Taylor in your fantasy drafts. Well, let's get into it. Jonathan Taylor is right now, maybe the poster boy of just how quickly and how volatile the NFL really is, how much it changes from year to year. Coming off his RB1 season in 2021, Jonathan Taylor was kind of considered an easy, top 3 pick in most fantasy drafts. Maybe you had McCaffrey over him or Eckler, but a lot of people were taking Jonathan Taylor with the overall number 1 pick. And I don't blame him. He came off a monster season in 2021 where he put up over 1,800 yards, over 2,100 total yards, and 20 touchdowns. The dude was a stud. And that was, coming off a rookie season where he was really, really good. In 2020, he was RB6, and he didn't even start the whole year, right? He really got hot in the second half. 2021, we talked about it. He was RB1 in half PPR. 2022 dealt with injuries. High ankle sprains are tough to come back from. Even if you do come back from them, you're not completely right, especially as a running back. He was just RB34, again, missing 6 games and just not really being healthy for a lot of those. So now we're going into his 4th year, and really it's tough. What should we expect from Jonathan Taylor? He has probably a new starting quarterback from week 1 in Anthony Richardson, and we know that Anthony Richardson is a runner. Now, generally with rookie quarterbacks, I think we feel pretty good about the run game, that they're going to rely a little bit more on the run game as they adjust to the NFL. And generally that's true. I would say it's more the receivers we have to be worried about, but it is a little different when we have running quarterbacks. So before we kind of get into it and dive into the numbers, who knows? But before we get into that, I just want to show a little bit of kind of what the community is feeling about Jonathan Taylor here. I am sharing with you his NFFC draft trends basically since the beginning of the year. I looked it up, and basically since June 1st, again, it's June 29th, so basically since June 1st, he's been going 13th overall in ADP. That's his ADP. Again, that brings into a lot of like best ball, PPR leagues. It's a lot of different leagues coming together there, so it's really hard to say, especially in June, what his ADP is, but it's kind of the best we have to go on right now. But you can see he's kind of going down a little bit, but not drastically. He doesn't have a drastic downturn. I mean, basically from February, he was the 10th overall pick. And at this point, he's right around the 13th overall pick. So he hasn't fallen too much. I think he's about RB4 going off the board. And the question is that where we should be taking him? Should we be taking him at the end of the first round, as RB4 at the beginning of the second round at the 1-2 turn? Is that where he should be going? Or should we be fading him just a little bit further? Is there some risk in Jonathan Taylor? So I went back and looked at quarterbacks since 2000, quarterbacks to rush for over 700 yards in a season. And just kind of looking at the main running backs on those teams and what they did on those teams. So you can see here, since 2000, there's been 19 quarterbacks since the year 2000 that have rushed for at least 700 yards, from Lamar Jackson to Cam Newton. So a decent sample size, I would say. 19 since 2000, a little bit less than about 1 a year. It's definitely been more frequent in the last 4 or 5 years with Lamar Jackson, Justin Fields, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Kyler Murray. These guys just in the last 4 or 5 years have been doing it, multiple guys every year. So if we look at these guys, quarterbacks to rush for over 700 yards, And I just went back and looked at, okay, what did the running backs, the top leading rushers, the best fantasy finishes on their team for running backs. And if we look at it here, guys, in orange, I highlighted top 15 running back seasons. This is half PPR, by the way. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 guys finished in the top 15. We had in the green here, we had top 10 finishes. So we have 3 more guys finishing in the top 10. And then in the yellow, we have top 5 finishes, and that was just one guy. Only one guy finished in the top 5 that had a quarterback that rushed for 700 or more rushing yards. A little alarming, I would say. Slightly alarming for Jonathan Taylor. Not that I think he's going to be a complete bust, but again, where are we taking him? Where is he going to go? That's what I'm worried about. Again, currently he's a fringe first rounder. He's right at that 1-2 turn. He's going as like an RB4. And if we just kind of look at the numbers here, there's only been one running back to finish RB4. That was Marshawn Lynch in 2014. Had a really good season, over 1,600 yards, 17 touchdowns. We have a couple others like Alfred Morris in 2012. Saquon Barkley last year finished in the top 10. He finished RB6. And Mark Ingram in 2019 finished as RB8. But again, that'd be a little bit of a disappointment. Where we're drafting Jonathan Taylor and the guys we're passing up on, I would say we want Jonathan Taylor to be a top 4 running back, not 6th, not 8th. Just looking at who's going around him right now, you have to take it, Saquon Barkley is a guy, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Devontae Adams, Garrett Wilson. Jonathan Taylor is currently going ahead of all those guys. And if you're taking him ahead of all those guys, you want him to be in the top 4 for running backs, top 4 or 5 at worst. And the numbers are kind of showing that might not be the case. That might not be possible. Again, here are the numbers. Only 1 running back has finished in the top 5. Only 3 have finished in the top 10. Slightly concerning. And then, 4 more. So what is that? 8 of the 19 running backs finished in the top 15. So that means over half of them, 10 of the 19 finished, or 11 of the 19, I believe, finished outside the top 15, which would just be a disaster. If you're taking Jonathan Taylor at the 1-2 turn and he's finishing outside top 15, you are probably losing your fantasy leagues. Now, some data to kind of back this up as well is just kind of thinking about, one more thing I wanted to talk about with that. I'm going to pull that screen back up real quick. If you look at the running backs that did finish in the top 10, again, Mark Ingram, Alfred Morris, Marshawn Lynch, and Saquon Barkley last year. If you look at them, each one, the quarterbacks for that year didn't score more than 8 touchdowns. If you look at it here, they all scored 7 or less touchdowns. So yes, they had big rushing numbers, 1,200 yards, 850 yards. But they didn't score more than 7 touchdowns, which meant that more rushing touchdowns for the running backs. We look at it. Mark Ingram had 10 rushing touchdowns. Marshawn Lynch had 13. Alfred Morris had 13. Saquon Barkley had 10. Even in the top 15, you had Michael Vick only had 3 rushing touchdowns. Kyler Murray did have 11 when Kenyon Drake was there. He's an exception. Miles Sanders last year was an exception, but they just ran the hell out of the ball. Cam Newton, another one for Christian McCaffrey. So basically what I'm trying to say is the rushing touchdowns is super, super key. If you have a quarterback that is stealing those goal line carries, that's really going to affect that running back. Those are easy points for running backs. Those 1, 2, 3 yard carries. We saw it with like a Jamal Williams last year. The guy had 18 freaking touchdowns. He was, a top 12 fantasy guy, top 15 fantasy guy, strictly because of touchdowns. They are huge. And basically what we're seeing here is none of the running backs on this list that finish in the top 10 Their quarterbacks did not rush for more than 7 rushing touchdowns. Now, what does that mean? We don't know what Anthony Richardson's going to do in the NFL. We don't know if he's even going to start week 1. But I think we're leaning towards he's going to be the starter, and it makes sense. He's going to be the starter week 1. That's where I'm putting my money. Again, training camps haven't started. We don't know yet. But Anthony Richardson, if he starts 17 games, I would be shocked, absolutely shocked if he doesn't get at least 700 rushing yards. I would be shocked. Over a 17-game season, guys, that's not a lot of rushing yards per game. You do the math, that is 41 rushing yards a game. Anthony Richardson can do that. Another thing about him is he's a big guy. He's a big running back. He's not a slight, skinny guy. He's not a Kyler Murray. He's not even like a Lamar Jackson, who's pretty skinny. He's more like a Cam Newton, right? And what was Cam Newton really good at? He was good at scoring touchdowns at the goal line. Jalen Hurts is another guy. Not a big guy, but very thick, built from the bottom down, scoring touchdowns. So that's something to be concerned about with Jonathan Taylor. Another thing to be concerned about is just the nature of the Eagles' offense. If we look at it here, Shane Steichen, who's the head coach of the Colts, was the offensive coordinator for the Eagles the last 2 years in 2021 and 2022. And we look at running back targets for the Eagles. In 2022, they had 61 targets. That was the lowest in the NFL. 61 targets, guys. Only 61. 61 over a 17-game season is tiny. It's 3.5 targets to running backs a game. That doesn't help Jonathan Taylor at all. And Jonathan Taylor's not even a big pass catcher, but he can catch 40 passes because he's going to be out there 65% of the time. But not if the Eagles or the Colts are only throwing to the running backs 3.5 times a game. Now, in 2021, when Shane Steichen was the offensive coordinator, they had 106 targets, 18th in the NFL, so right around average. However, there's something very, very important. The first 7 weeks, they had 59 targets, about 8.5 targets a game for their running backs. The final 10 weeks, they had 47, just over 4.5 targets a game. They cut that number by almost 4 targets a game. Now, you might be thinking, well, coincidence. If you remember that 2021 season, I think the Eagles started off 2-5 the first 7 weeks. They were horrible. They started off 2-5. Jalen Hurts was throwing the ball like 30, 40 times a game. And remember the fans cheering when they would run the ball? Like, why aren't you running the ball? They would start cheering. From week 8 on, they started to run the ball a lot more. Jalen Hurts was not throwing the ball 30 times a game. In fact, I don't even think he had a game from week 8 on in 2021 where he threw more than 30 times. And they started to win games. I think they made the playoffs that year. I think they went something like 7-3 or 8-2 down the stretch in their last 10 games. They were running the ball a lot more. And I also read, I don't know this for sure, but I also read that's when they shifted to more of an RPO style of an offense was in week 8 of the 2021 season. And that carried over to the 2022 season where they ran 20% of their plays, the Eagles plays in 2022 were RPO plays. That's a huge number. I think there was only 1 or 2 other teams that were higher than them. 20% of their plays were RPOs. Now, you might be thinking, why is this important? And there's been people kind of doing studies into RPO offenses. Ben Gretsch is one of them. You should follow him on Twitter. And he was doing kind of a lot of research this offseason in what RPOs means for the offense. And an RPO is a run-pass option. So either you're running it or you're passing it. Now, the key is if you pass it, you have to pass it right away. You can't sit back there and wait 4 or 5 seconds because your offensive linemen are run blocking. They're not pass blocking. And that's important because they're going to go downfield. They're going to block downfield. They're going to get to the second level. That's just what they're going to do. They think we're running the ball, right? And if you pass the ball and your offenses are downfield, that's a penalty. So you have to pass it instantly. You can't hold it. So that means you have one option and you pass it. And it can't be to the running back because you're potentially handing it off to the running back. The running back is not really running a route. Maybe he runs, something after he doesn't get the ball, but he's expecting to get the ball. So when you pull it, you're passing it right away. The running back's still there. So that's really, really key. And that plays into why the Eagles had so few running back targets. In my opinion, it's because they ran 20% of their plays as an RPO. Now, does that mean the Colts are going to do that with Anthony Richardson? I would assume so. Just looking at the success the Eagles had basically from week 8 of the 2021 NFL season through the end of 2022, the Eagles were one of the best teams in the NFL. If right there behind the Chiefs, they made it to a Super Bowl with Jalen Hurts and running an RPO style offense. So that is reason to be concerned. Jonathan Taylor, a quarterback who is going to run the ball, right? Run the ball way more than Matt Ryan did last year. So a quarterback that's going to run the ball, a quarterback that could potentially take away goal line touchdowns and goal line carries, and an offense that probably is going to be a very, at least 15, 20% RPO style offense. And that basically means there's 20% of the plays that the running back is not going to get the ball in terms of the passing. So all of these combined, I'm a little bit concerned about Jonathan Taylor. I think we need to take all of that into account. Now, do I think Jonathan Taylor should not be drafted or should fall to the 5th round? No, I don't. Am I going to take Jonathan Taylor over those guys that I mentioned? Devontae Adams, Amon-Ra St. Brown, what was the other? Garrett Wilson. Am I going to take him over these guys? Probably not. And that's the big key. If I can get Jonathan Taylor at the end of the 2nd round, at the 2-3 turn, I'm okay with it. If I have to take him at the 1-2 turn, I think I'm going to fade Jonathan Taylor this year, and I would probably recommend that all of you do that as well. You have to draft him as basically RB4, and I think that's like best case scenario is he finishes as the RB4. I don't see him finishing as the overall RB1 unless a bunch of people get hurt. So just wanted to present that, continue with some of these player team profiles for you guys. This one was about Jonathan Taylor. We have other ones out there about Devontae Adams, the Colts offense, which in general in their passing game and how that's going to affect guys like Michael Pittman. So we'll keep putting these out during the offseason. And appreciate it, guys. Again, if you could like the video, subscribe to the channel. That would be wonderful. And we'll catch you guys all